Men marry to consume his wife-made food, to wear his wife-laundered clothes, and to reside in his wife-cleaned home. Men marry to get a new mother, because they're big babies. Hello lovely people, my name is Emma, welcome back to my channel, welcome if you are new. I'm standing up today. Don't say I never do anything for you. I don't know, I just felt like most of my videos I need to be sat on my computer and today I don't, so I wanted to get a bit of energy going. It might be a mistake because I might be inclined to do this all the time and then the whole video would be really hard to watch. We'll see. It's a whole... I had to figure out where to put my coffee. I decided to keep it on my dinosaur shelf. I thought they would look after it. My hair looks brown in this light. It's really upsetting because it's actually grey. It's actually a nice grey, but this light makes it brown. Today then, I would like to talk to you about pure patriarchal power. So this is an Instagram account that was recommended to me. Thank you very much for that. It is effectively a copy-paste of every one of these pro-patriarchy accounts I've ever seen. Yes, take it on its own, but maybe kind of think of this as the archetype of all of these kind of accounts. Here you go guys, look after that, thank you. Most importantly, and as always, no flaming, be nice. This person clearly has very, very different views to me and most of us. I think what they share is a mix of silly and harmful, but that's no excuse to send hate on the internet. One of the pleasant things about this community is that we tend to be a lot nicer than the people we talk about, so let's keep that up by spreading nothing but love. Instead, leave all your thoughts down here on my video and help me feed the YouTube algorithm. So this is their bio. Pure patriarchal power with little sword symbols for some reason. Their job is listed as coach. There's none of that on their Instagram, but hey, they could be a coach of something completely unrelated. That could be true. Catholic, quelle surprise. Mesofeminist, I'm not sure how they're pronouncing this. I had to look this up to find out what it actually meant because in my head I was like, miso soup. It's actually taking the miso part from misogyny. It's basically another term for anti-feminist. Hatred of feminism is what that means. Helping women to be patriarchal wives. With patriarchal insights from a patriarch. Advocate for patriarchal family. Do you think this person is into patriarchy? Let's take a look at some of the posts. I'll stand to one side so that I can share the posts on the other side. That'll be clever, won't it? Editing me'll love that. The patriarch lives a serene and easy life because of his industrious housewife. This 50s style painting almost looks like it's advocating for the opposite just because the housewife looks so miserable. She looks so fucking done. But the post isn't about her, it's about the man. It's about the patriarch having a lovely life because his wife is doing everything. The act of bringing life into this world makes a woman's life meaningful, not her degrees and career, because the two are mutually exclusive. So, a while ago, I read the Girl Defined book, and I reviewed it with Savvy Writes Books. You should go and check that out. I don't know if it's out just yet, but if and when it is, I'll link it down below. It's really fun. Even Girl Defined acknowledged things like economic pressure, meaning that women might have to work, and that some women can't give birth, some women aren't ready or aren't in the position of being able to be a mother, whether that's by having children or by adopting, and that they can also live a good, godly life pursuing other things. All in the service of God, obviously, which I fundamentally disagree with, but even Girl Defined accept that there are ways to be a godly woman without strictly just giving birth right now, you know what I mean? When I read something from an account that makes me go, Girl Defined is more modern than this, that's when there's a problem. It's also just really hurtful and cruel to women who can't have children. A woman's first step toward femininity is by stop wearing masculine clothes. Not only is there no definition here of what masculine clothes are, because hello, history of fashion, men used to wear makeup, men used to wear high heels. Fashion is just, clothing is just something that ebbs and changes as the mood changes, as history changes. These people, I'll talk about this more in a minute, but these people are specifically stuck in this one period of history. They talk about traditional values, but it's only one kind of tradition. It's the American 1950s tradition. Nothing before that, nothing after that. And then they've got a picture of this woman and she's wearing jeans and a shirt, which makes me think that this is supposed to be an example of what a woman shouldn't wear. But all the other pictures on this account are of what women should look like or should be doing, so this one just leaves me more confused than anything. At the end, she will be dressed in an apron only. I don't know what that means, but it seems kind of sexy. A wife's chastity, virginity, hospitality, docility, and servility must be reserved for her husband alone. This is a very transformed wife kind of thing, where it's like women are wasting their lives serving somebody else in the workplace instead of their husband. And again, the picture is a bit sexy. I don't know, it's just... I also think it's a mistake to add hospitality into that list, because even by, like, biblical standards or traditional standards, the wives are supposed to be hospitable to everybody. They're supposed to create a hospitable home to welcome, I don't know, the husband's boss over to dinner or to have their lady friends over or whatever. Probably nobody should reserve hospitality just for their husband, otherwise they're going to be rude to everyone who comes over. I love the whole look that the person in the picture here has got, by the way. Feminists are the killjoys of womanhood. By taking away the promised joys in a woman's life, by taking away the promised joys in women's life, say the delight of being a deferential wife, a nurturant mother, and a busy housewife. If you really are pro women staying in the home and being wives and house mothers, again, there's plenty of women who would love to, but can't afford it, you should be campaigning for a more even distribution of wealth. Back in the 1950s dream world that they live in, it was easier for a single income to support a whole family. That's gotten harder and harder over time, so women have to work even if they don't want to. That's not feminism's fault. Women are made to be delightful homemakers. But most women become spiteful home wreckers. Most women become home wreckers? As in breaking up a home by being with a married man? That's what I take home wreckers to mean, usually. Citation needed? Animal rights isn't her way. Her way is to fulfill her husband's rights. I just thought that was interesting. My chair is here, by the way, that's what I'm leaning on. Just in case you thought I was magic or something. I've never heard that take before. That women should be too busy supporting their husbands to support animal rights. Traditionally in those kind of households, especially if you had like a well-to-do husband, the wife usually filled a lot of her time with like charity work. That's kind of the traditional thing. But apparently that's not allowed now. Even charity work isn't allowed for the homemaker. Men marry to consume his wife-made food, to wear his wife-laundered clothes, and to reside in his wife-cleaned home. Men marry to get a new mother, because they're big fucking babies. How do a mother love her children? Love their daddy. Honour their daddy. Obey their daddy. Forgive their daddy. I love that even in this, we're already assuming that the dad is doing stuff wrong that needs to be forgiven. Men who don't know how to fix things are like women who don't know how to cook. The picture here is really delightful. I don't know what it is. Just the confused face, the sat with the wrench, like trying to look at the book. That's like me trying to do DIY. That's such a mood. Let's play house, said Sue to Tommy. Dress old Spot like Uncle Lou. You be dad, I'll be mummy. And fresh up just the way they do. Let the children follow traditional gender roles. I agree. Let the children do whatever the hell they want. Let them follow traditional gender roles if they want. Let them do the opposite. Just let children play. I love the idea as well with this picture that the traditional way to be is also for your dog to dress up like your uncle. Her purpose is to be a mother. This person's Catholic, so I'm just going to say, if it's her purpose to be a mother, why can so many women not have children? It is most laudable in a married woman to be devout, but she must never forget that she is a housewife. And sometimes she must leave God at the altar to find him in her housekeeping. St. Francis of Rome. Catholicism. I saw this discussion basically somewhere in the comments of an older video of mine, where this woman was basically explaining that she had done years of study and research into theology and her religion, and her husband had not, and the idea of her deferring to him for everything religious, and that if she disagrees with him on something biblical, that she should assume he's right. That idea is just crazy to me. This post is saying, quit spending so much time worshipping God and do your chores, woman. It's almost like they don't care about women's relationship with God, they just care about making sure that these women feel pressured into being mothers to these very grown-up men who can't do their own laundry. For a woman, being a feminist is an excuse to avoid traditional womanly roles. And avoiding womanly roles is equal to murdering the woman in you. Pop a comment down below if you're a feminist and you enjoy traditional womanly roles. I promise they exist. You know what? Sometimes doing a bit of housework feels really good. Doesn't stop people being a feminist, and vice versa. Being a feminist doesn't stop people marrying a man and settling down and having children and all those traditional things that pure patriarchal power is supporting. They can coexist. The nerve centre of a woman's joy is obeying her dearest husband. That makes it sound like she's got a whole bunch of husbands and she's supporting her favourite one makes her really happy. Isn't this just Catholicism in a nutshell as well? I'm so glad we have all these men telling us how to live our lives better and how to have a happier life. A wife-made tea is the best tea in the world. To be fair, the spirit of that I'm kind of down with. I do genuinely think that tea tastes better if somebody else makes it. But if you go to like a really fancy cafe that's got like amazing tea making equipment and tea that you couldn't get hold of, that might be better than your wife could make. I don't know. Oh, this is a long one. The feminine hands illiterate of cooking, serving and homekeeping are unworthy to handle other acts of work outside the home. Teach your girls the beauty of household chores. They will never abandon it for useless careers and unwomanly whims. Disagree. I grew up with my mum. I learned how to do chores. Technically, I guess I abandoned it for pursuing a career and womanly whims. Except that I still do both. Let a girl know that when she is dressed in short, skin-tight and skin-showing immodest dress, she is also provoking and offending the paternal and godly eyes of her father. I'm assuming that's father with a capital F as in that father. I'd love to talk about a little bit of history. These traditional values people always seem to focus on a very specific small period of history and also ignore the actual spoken, documented desires of women and claim to know better. So let's just talk about that a little bit. So this kind of traditionalism, and you can tell by the pictures chosen, especially by this account, it always focuses on 1950s America, 1950s USA, which is always amazing to me because immediately before that, you had World War II. The men, in their traditional role, went off to fight in the war, leaving the women to take up all the vital careers that not only kept society running, but helped in the war effort. Women were in factories, driving trucks, flying military vehicles, being lab technicians, etc, etc, etc. It is a documented historical fact that women wanted to keep these roles when the war was over. So I'm sorry, but I'm not taking this women are happier when they're in the home with no job. Even if you're talking specifically about US history, that's demonstrably not true. Women wanted to keep their jobs. As we know, they were then forced out of these jobs by men returning from the war. Even women military veterans were having a hard time accessing the support that was meant for them. What followed was a period of propaganda intended to reinforce the stereotype that good women want to stay at home and not have careers and be housewives, and bad women want to go out into the world and support women's rights. I suspect that's why the gender roles in the media at this time were so extreme, because women had finally experienced the opportunity to explore more roles, and the majority of them wanted to continue in the workforce. People like pure patriarchal power are leaning into the exact same propaganda that was being put out over 70 years ago. As usual, I will drop some links down in the description. Here's a quote from one of the sources that I'm using today. The figures reveal that by the early 1960s, more married women were in the labour force than any previous time in American history. This leads us up to a point that I mentioned briefly earlier, and I bring up a lot when we talk about these kind of traditional gender roles people. Over time, it has become increasingly difficult to support a family on a single income. That is just a fact. Most of the time, both people in a relationship have to work, regardless of gender, because it's not financially viable to live on a single income. If these people really want traditional gender roles, they should be pushing for universal basic income, or just a better distribution of wealth. Not only is this kind of messaging, by which I mean women are evil for pursuing careers instead of being homemakers, not only is that offensive to women who work and do want those things, it's insulting to women who want to be homemakers but can't afford it. There are so many people, gender aside, who would love to stay at home while their children are young and look after the household and raise their kids. So many, but they can't, and demonising them does not solve the problem. So we've established the historical, contextual reasoning behind this traditional 50s gender role. For some reason, traditional gender roles people, they don't usually define that the 50s are what they're looking at. They don't define the particular traditions that they're looking at, again, because what is feminine and what is masculine changes so much over history that really they should, and they should explain why that particular period is the best. They don't tend to look any earlier in history, so I'd like to do that a little bit. There's a really interesting paper that I'll link down below on the history of women in medicine, and when we looked a while ago at Think Before You Sleep, that was one of the major areas in which women dominate the field. Here's a couple of quotes from that study. As early as 4000 BC, there were women who studied, taught, and practiced medicine. The first known woman physician, Merit Ptah, practiced in Egypt in 2500 BC. According to Chinese records, in 1000 BC, women engaged in typical physician-like activities. Women founded and staffed early hospitals in 260 to 220 BC. The deaconesses of the early Christian church developed the first public health systems. By the 8th century, Arab medicine began to flourish. Since Muslim men were forbidden from having contact with women who were not family members, women cared for women. In Islamic Spain, women received medical education and were surgeons before the 12th century. So there's a huge and fascinating history of women in medicine that I recommend you look into because it is really interesting. Let's take a look at some other vocations now. The first poem written down, which has survived to present day, was written by a woman whose name I'm about to absolutely butcher, Enheduanna. She was a priestess in Sumerian civilization, and her poem is a prayer of praise to a female deity called Inanna. So the first known author was a woman. In the Celtic culture of Gaul, which is now France, and the British Isles, women fought as warriors alongside men. What they may have lacked in physical strength, they are said to have made up for in the fierceness of their attacks. Boudica, a British Celtic queen who fought against the Roman invaders of her country, is a prime example of how a woman at this time could be a political and military leader. This is some of my favourite history because I really think I'm going to lean on my chair again because I'm going to share some thoughts and spill some tea. I just think the historical context of, I've mostly looked into Christianity, but religion in general is so fascinating, and I wish more religious people would do this research into the history of their religion outside of the religious text. Which religious books were influenced by which politicians, which kings and queens, what was the political influence over certain pieces being added and removed, what was the political historical context around certain dogma being introduced in your religions. Not only do I think it's important to actually understand why you believe certain things, because if you're going to believe something, you should probably know why, but it's also just super interesting. So I'm going to read some more quotes related to the Christian church. In the early Christian church, there is evidence that women could hold positions of influence equal to men. This was particularly true of followers of Gnostic Christianity in the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, who had female bishops among their communities. In the 4th and 5th centuries AD, there was a systemic degrading of women in the writings of the Church Fathers. Writers such as Tertullian, St. Augustine, and St. Jeremy vented bitter spleen against women. It was these Church Fathers who blamed Eve for the downfall of humanity, and by extension all women everywhere. As the Middle Ages wore on, men began to muscle in on what had traditionally been the realm of women. Again, these are technically women's traditional gender roles. I could do my own Instagram, hey, maybe that would be a fun experiment, about traditional gender roles, but I could use this earlier history that predates the 1950s traditional roles that everybody else uses, and we could make something new where the traditional roles of women were all about medicine, roles within the church. Wouldn't that be so interesting? I bet people would hate that. Apothecaries, barber surgeons, alchemists and doctors began to compete with herbal cures. Doctors dismissed these herbal remedies as quackery in favour of their own practices, which frankly were a lot less effective. Bloodletting, leeches, balancing humours and such like. This of course led to the criminalisation of practising medicine without a licence, and universities wouldn't let women attend, effectively shutting them out from the area completely. So that's my history ramble for the day. I just saw this Instagram and I thought, okay, we'll talk about this a little bit, we'll share some of the pictures, we'll laugh at it, but I kind of wanted to challenge it because I'm so tired of seeing traditional gender roles that actually ascribe to such a narrow, specific period of time and specific tradition. If you are going to be pro-traditional gender roles, I think you have an obligation to explain exactly what traditions and why. There's plenty of people we look at on this channel who are weirdly strict about masculine and feminine fashion, say somebody like Classically Abby. And of course, it takes 5 minutes to look at history and discover that what used to be traditionally masculine is now traditionally feminine. And so you need to be able to defend the reasoning behind that position. I hope you found this interesting. I hope maybe you learned something. Do go and read more around the subject of women's roles throughout history. It's super, super fascinating. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this. Do leave your thoughts down below. It helps so much. If you don't know what to write in the comments section, try and help me come up with a name for my traditional gender roles Instagram account, okay? Because I think that would be funny. If you did enjoy this video, do consider liking, do consider giving it a little share, write a little comment down below, check out my other videos. Do subscribe if you haven't already. If you're not completely sick of hearing my voice, I do also have a gaming channel on YouTube. I play lots of cute wholesome games, I play some scary games, it's good stuff. And I am live on Twitch twice a week with more video games, so check that out as well. I think that's everything I've got to plug right now. Before we go, I would like to give a huge shout out and a big thank you to my giant chickens over on Patreon. Let's find the list, it's getting a little bit large. It's getting large and in charge. I got it, here we go. Thank you so much to Aaron Speer, Amalgam of Neuroses, Amber, Chantal, Chris Simpson, Connie Wright, Conla, Chicken Maximus Lyons, God damn it Conla, Curious Capybara, Danny, Dennis Givens, Elle, Faye Gregory, Fulcrum, Gaming Ridge, Henry Curtis, Izzy, Jason Metcalf, Joe Rowe, Kristkan Wager, Lizzy Gayle, Lynn Dobbs, Mattus McChicken Nuggetus, Miles Tegg, Mogaringa, Mr. Creosote, Nerd Fiction, Nick Hook, Ninja Red, Sarah Shavy, Simping on Emma Thorne, Seriously, Tank Low, The Enchanter formerly known as Tim, The Myth Vision Podcast, and Tracy O'Rourke. You guys are amazing, thank you so much for all your support. Have a very lovely week, and I will see you really soon.